much, everyone, for making it all the way here so early in the morning as well. I appreciate you taking the time. I'll do my best to make it worth your while. Before we get started, I want to ask a question. I want you to tell me by show of hands if you have ever felt upset about not having enough time to do the things that really matter to you. You know, hobbies, past. Yeah, I think we have all, two hands. Yes, absolutely. We have all been on that boat at some stage, and you are in the right place because my mission today is to help you forever forget the phrase, sorry, I don't have time, with 5 simple steps that if you pull off, I can promise you will be able to get more done in less time and unlock free time to do the things that matter to you. But before we get into that, you're probably wondering, well, why should I even listen to you? So let me tell you a little bit about why you can believe I can help you at least a little bit with this. My name is Joaquin, and I came to Australia about 9 and a bit years ago as an international student. I was really excited about having an epic adventure whilst pursuing my postgraduate studies. Meeting friends, exploring the country, and having a great time. But little did I know, things were going to be a little bit different than what I imagined. Different language, different culture, different educational system, and a very different economy. And I found myself working like crazy, and I was going from work to uni, from uni to work, sleeping only a few hours every night, completely overwhelmed and not really having time to do anything but those 2 things. And it reached a point where I was ready to drop the towel. I remember I had just finished one of the most difficult classes I was taking at the time. I was living in Melbourne. It was winter, it was cold, it was raining, and I was just dragging my feet back home thinking, you know what? I didn't sign up for this. I just want to buy a ticket back to Mexico, the motherland of tacos and tequila, and be back to the comfort zone. But the next day, I don't know if it was destiny or sheer dumb luck, but I met a person that would completely change my life. Sitting right next to me on the classroom, I met this mature age student, old enough to be my dad, who quickly became my friend, and I did what we tend to do with our friends, and that is I started to whinge about how miserable things were for me at the time. And look, I am someone who generally doesn't like to be told what to do, but I was so desperate that I actually listened, and he started giving me some piece of advice that made a 180 in the experience I was having. And the biggest advice he gave was for me to join a residential college, a place called International House, where I was living with students from 50 different countries around the world who were all experiencing the same type of issues as me, and they were troubleshooting. And whilst in there, I became also a tutor. That was a role I was not necessarily thinking about, but it was good money. So I took the opportunity and I found myself completely enthralled by it. To have the ability to help younger students navigate through the same issues I was going through was an eye-opener. And I am sure all of you have heard that the best way to learn something is to teach it. And really quickly, I started to branch out to other colleges in Melbourne. And in one of those, Trinity College, right after I finished my postgraduate studies, I became an academic advisor, and my role became to help the students living at a college. Firstly, who of you have heard about Australian residential colleges? Because this is important. Okay, a few of you. Basically, for those who haven't, is an accommodation facility where students not only live and get meals, it has a full-blown sense of community, and they party quite a fair bit, and it's really busy. Students who go and live in colleges have a much richer and busier life than students who just go to uni normally and live in their family place or in a shared house. And I started to get exposed to the habits and behaviors of people who was trying to balance their personal life, their uni life, work, and everything else in between, and noticed how some people were thriving, they were getting good grades, they were involved in everything, and they seemed really chill and relaxed, and others were barely keeping up and never had time. And I started to pay attention. And now I work at St. John's College, I do the same, and I see a lot of similarities between student life and professional life, and how those who were always busy and never had time at uni are also busy and never had time in their professional life. And there are a lot of patterns out there that can make a difference, and it's what I want to share with you today. And I have made it my mission to try and help people to enjoy more free time. I feel we frequently think about financial wealth, but rarely do we stop to think how can we expand our time well so that we can actually go and enjoy the things that matter to us. So I started to branch out and try and share these ideas around the university, employment hubs, entrepreneurship hubs, business hubs, and I even wrote a book about it that is now, it's been sold in different parts of the world, and hopefully is making a little bit of a difference in the lives of people. And what is at the core of this book is what I want to share with you. And it is an idea that lives in the intersection between not only productivity, but also performance, because we need both. When we combine that, we're able to get it done. That's how I like to call it. And when we get it done, then we're able to enjoy extra time to do the things that matter, whether it is in the social aspect, in terms of expanding your business, if you are growing your business, pursuing that forgotten hobby or sport, or just spending more quality time with the family. So, 5 steps. If you put them off, and you don't even have to go through all of them, even if you apply a tiny little bit of what I am going to share with you today, I can promise it's going to make a difference. Now, the way this works, I am a firm believer on the minimum effective dose. For each of the steps, I'm going to give you some ideas that help to implement them, that require the least amount of effort from your end, and yet carry the maximum possible benefit. And at the end of each step, I'm going to share with you a couple of bullet points that, more than bullet points, action points, specific little actions that you could take today that will make a difference. And at the end of the presentation, I am going to share with you a document with all of them. So for now, don't worry too much about trying to copy them or anything like that. By all means, if you want to take notes, do take notes. I'll be sharing with you a bunch of material at the end so that you can make the most out of it, because I don't expect anyone to retain a bunch of information in the short period of time we have available. Now, without further delay, let's get into it. And the first step is to prepare our body for productivity, or to get it done. It doesn't matter if you have the best productivity tools out there and the latest AI assistants. If we don't have the energy to actually make things happen, it is very unlikely that we will be able to push the needle. So, how do we generate energy? Well, there are many different ways to do this. And the first one, you're probably going to be like, really? But seriously, is the most important one. And it's all about sleep. few years ago, I came across this book called Why We Sleep by an author called Matt Walker. And on it, he explains everything about sleep. And there is a particular study, well, series of studies. It was a similar version of the same experiment that was performed in different universities around the world, where they looked at how many hours do we actually need to sleep to get a fully rested and recovered body. And it blew my mind that 7 hours, which normally is thought to be enough, is not. When I read this, I was studying for an exam called the CFA, which is a certification in finance. Is anyone familiar with this exam? Well, the exam itself is not that important. The thing that is important is that it requires a big chunk of time to prepare for this. It's at the same level of a master's degree. And as part of the preparation, students take weekly tests to assess their knowledge. And to try to scrape time to prepare for this whilst having a full-time job and having a personal life, playing sport, engaging with my friends, I decided it would be a great idea to reduce the number of hours I was sleeping every night until finding the sweet spot where I could be a functional human being. And I tried 5 hours, that felt horrible. 6 hours still feel nasty. 7 hours felt just fine. You're okay, 7 hours saves me 7 hours in a week, which is almost 30 hours in a month. Solid. And I was feeling good, no issues whatsoever. But after reading this study, where the experiment consisted in different groups of people that were exposed to material they needed to study to then present an exam, and between the study session and the exam, they were asked to cope different levels of sleep deprivation, from 24 hours of sleep deprivation to sleeping 7 hours per night, so 1 hour of sleep deprivation. And what really shocked me is that after 1 week of sleeping only 7 hours, people experience the same level of cognitive deficit as those who didn't sleep for a full 24 hours. So I decided to bring this to the test. And I ramped up from 7 hours to 8 hours just to see what happened. And to my surprise, the average results I was getting in my weekly tests for this exam jumped by 15%. I thought it was a fluke, but the week after, still 15% above the threshold. I cut down to 7 hours again, dropped by 15%. And not only did my scores benefited from the additional sleep, I was a little bit less edgy in my daily interactions at work. I was providing better insights during team meetings. I was answering more emails every day and was just functioning at a higher level than before. Just sleeping enough hours. And it's not only quantity, it's also quality. Something that you can try besides increasing the amount of hours is trying to make your room darker, more quiet, or colder. That enhances our ability to actually rest. Give it a crack and you will see the difference. And you can try it tonight. Next, hydration and food. This is something I learned doing the most unproductive activity I can think about. When I was still at uni, I was very heavily addicted to video games. But also I am really competitive and a bit of a nerd, so I was very clinical about it, and I would follow gaming coaches and try to get technical to improve my game. And I came across a coach who suggested that at a certain level, it's not necessarily about how good you are at the game, but about how capable is your body to react quickly to stimuli. And he recommended drinking more water and eating better food to improve synapses in the brain. I thought, oh well, why not? I can drink more water, that's easy enough. And so I did, and to my surprise, I was still terrible at the game. That really didn't help a lot because I just suck at those things. But I found that my assessments felt a little bit easier and that my academics started to increase, to be a bit better. Same at work. I was a little bit edgy with the customers at the bar I was working at during the time. And food, I just couldn't be bothered. But I was always hungry. That was a thing when I am still always hungry. But it felt at the time a bit sickening. I thought there was a living organism inside of me eating my food. So I went to the doctor, and after running some tests, they told me, well, you are just healthy, your metabolism runs fast, but we need to tweak your diet so that you get the right amount of macros at the right time so you can benefit from the nutrients, get more out of it, get more bang for your buck in terms of food and nutrition. So he tailored my diet. Here I am not advocating for any particular type of diet. It's just getting the right nutrients for you. This is something is better done with a specialist. I do heavily recommend going to a nutritionist and having a chat to adjust your diet so that it works the best for you. And I did find that after making adjustments in how I ate, the amounts and the times, I experienced another jump in my capacity to think clearly and to be effective during the day. Give it a crack. Drink a little bit more water, just to the point where your pee starts to become a little bit transparent. I know this comes with the drawback of having to go to toilet a little bit more, but the body adapts. You still go a little bit more frequently than otherwise, but the jump in capacity and your ability to get things done more quickly with the added brain power you gain out of being well hydrated well and truly surpasses the time lost by an extra trip or two to the toilet. And finally, move, exercise. We're not talking here about becoming Olympic athletes or getting into sessions that are painful, not at all. Just a little bit of movement every day makes a huge difference. When I was still doing my degree, I learned this lesson out of a heartbreak, really. For a reason, I finished a relationship I was at the time, and just to try and escape from the misery I was putting myself into, I decided it was a good idea to try and go for a run and make use of the gym facilities that we had at college. And my goodness, you get free access to legal drugs. You get so many endorphins and dopamine and other neurochemicals running through your system by just having a brisk walk, a light run, lifting, light weights, yoga, Pilates, you name it. Just get your heart rate up a little bit, have a little bit of a sweat every day, and you'll see how much more energy you can generate. Now, action items. Try and pick one thing you can do today to make your room either darker, cooler, or more quiet. Fill a water bottle and leave it in your night table or handy so that the first thing you do when you start the day is having a very healthy sip of water. A glass, hopefully a liter would be ideal, but I get it is not easy to drink so much water upon waking up, but it's a game changer if you can pull it off. And do a mini exercise routine, nothing too crazy, 30 seconds of movement, and you will see how much more active you will be during the day. It gives you crazy amount of momentum. That's step number one, prepare your body. Step number two, prepare your environment. Here's an idea. Our environment is always going to be more powerful than our willpower. We cannot outwill our surroundings. So if we are able to use what is around us to push us in the direction we want to go, we have half the battle already won. And to do this, I want to suggest two things. The first is to work on our distractions and interruptions. There are two big sources. Number one is the phone. That thing is a very helpful tool and also is designed by the smartest people in the world to suck our attention. So if you can turn off notifications, put that thing in airplane mode, put it in a drawer while you are working, put it in the fridge if you must, but just be as far away from that thing as possible makes a huge difference. Number two is people. Inevitably, when we work in an office or in a space where we're part of a team, people with the best of intentions might knock on our door to ask a question, to say hi, and that breaks our focus and our flow. It makes a huge difference if we create cues to signal that we are focused and that we rather not be disturbed during the window we're trying to concentrate. Put some headphones in, you don't need to be listening to anything, and people automatically assumes they cannot bother you. Close your door, put a sign that says, hey, I am trying to focus, but I'll be available from this time on. Those are little things. No one takes offense on that and makes a huge difference in your ability to keep your focus intact and get things done. The second thing is the friction around us. Friction is that which is between us and the activity we want to do. The more friction between us and the task we need to complete, the least likely it is that we will do it. The smaller the amount of friction, the more likely it is that we will perform the activity, irrespective of its nature. So, just look at that. If you were working on the space at the left, it'll be a lot more difficult to find the tools and things that you need to complete your work. Whereas on the right, well, it's neat and organized. Think how you store your digital assets as well. Crowded space, harder, lots of friction. Neat space, fewer friction. This goes hand in hand with the phone situation. If it is dinging and we have it handy, or if we feel, even if there are no notifications, if we feel the urge to check our message and is within reach, we'll do it. But if you feel, I wonder if my brother has said anything about the game we're going to watch tonight or whatever, and you have to walk all the way to the fridge, open the fridge, take the phone out, then it's less likely that you will do it. And this comes for both positive habits and not so positive habits. One thing that a lot of us are guilty of or have been guilty of at some stage is going back home after a big day at work, sitting on the couch and turning on the TV and waste there 1, 2, 3 hours that we could have used in something else that perhaps is more important to us. But if the controller was hidden, if the TV was disconnected, if the TV was in a different room, it would be a lot harder to actually go and waste time in that way. So think about how is your environment supporting your goals? How is it making it easier to do what matters to you? And how is it making it harder to do things that don't matter? And do this strategically. Now, what to do? Try and create your personal do not disturb signal and implement it at work. No one will take offense and you will get a lot more done. Tweak your workspace and make it more conducive to you focusing and making it more conducive to have ease at accomplishing what you want. And try and add friction to a habit or routine that you normally do that wastes your time, and find a way to reduce the friction associated to something that is actually important to you. That is step number 2. At this stage, we have the energy and our space is supporting us. Now we talk about preparing the task itself. This is where the traditional productivity advice lives. Setting goals, making plans, using tools, calendars, all that. There is an infinite amount of things we can do to streamline how we go about tasks. But I feel it really comes down to three things that make a huge difference. And if you think about it, every single tool out there that is designed to enhance productivity tackles one of the three things I am going to suggest, if not three of them. I like to call it the holy trinity of smashing things out of your way. And it's priorities, plans, and deadlines. That's the name of the game. And I realized this is the way to attack any task. When I was working as a bartender a few years ago in Melbourne while still studying, there were days when shifts were really chilled, really quiet, and yeah, I had an immense amount of uni work to do, and I was not allowed to do uni work whilst at work, understandably so. But in those really quiet days, my mind was spinning and thinking, geez, I have so much stuff to do. Wouldn't it be nice to make some progress right now that I have time? And even though that was not possible, I figured, well, at the very least, I could print a ticket and make a list of everything that is on my plate so I don't forget to do anything. That'll be a small win at least. So I printed a ticket and I started to write everything that I needed to do. Humongous list, very depressing to look at, but at least nothing was going to slip through the cracks. And then it occurred to me, well, probably all of these tasks are impossible to complete in the short period of time I will have available the next day after work. Let's just for funsies, give my best crack at gauging how long will each of my activities might take to complete to see what are we working with. So I started to add the times to all of the activities, and yes, indeed, it will take a lot longer than my available time to complete them all, which led me to think, well, if I don't have enough time to complete all of them in my next available work window, I might as well try and complete what will make the biggest difference, what will make me feel less stressed, and what would push the needle forward the most. So I had a plate and tried to arrange them in a way that would make my life a little bit easier. Get out of the way the deadlines that were closer, try to make some progress on things that were highly complex, and if the deadline was close, it wouldn't be a good idea to try and tackle the entire task altogether, essentially prioritizing what would be most worthy to complete. And then I rearranged the list so that everything will show up in the most appropriate order to work on it the next day. Next day came, and of course I was not able to complete everything, but to my surprise, I was able to complete a lot more tasks than what I originally thought. And this is because, without knowing it, I was leveraging a law or a phenomenon called Parkinson's law. Has anyone heard about Parkinson's law? No. Okay, we have some hands. Fantastic. Parkinson's law says that we tend to extend the duration of the activity we are engaged in all the way until filling the time window that we currently have to complete. And that's why most of us frequently end up delivering things within the deadline. Oh, you have until Tuesday night to complete this report. We end up finishing it by Tuesday night. Think about high school, uni. Most of the time we were delivering things by the deadline. That's Parkinson's law in all of its glory. So when we create fictional deadlines, we tend to compress work. We can use it in our favor. Priority plan a deadline. Give that a crack, and it makes a huge difference. One format that I like to use to pull this off, I call it the priority closure cheat sheet. It follows that structure, and I will be sharing with you a printable version of that at the end, so you can try it. I strongly recommend, and basically you set up your priorities, you define the specific actions you can take to attack that priority, whether you are able to finish it or not. You figure what things might distract me, and you come up with a solution to mitigate and eradicate that distraction if it was to happen. I'll be sharing with you that at the end. However, there is something that you might be thinking. It sounds really good, right? Define my priorities, make a plan of attack, and then define a fictional deadline so I can attack it quicker. But what if I don't have the willpower or the discipline to actually do it? Because I know the real deadline is at a different point in time. Well, worry not. We do exactly the same thing that we do when we don't have natural capability on something. I am not a mechanic. I cannot fix my car if it breaks. So I take it to an expert who knows how to do it. We can delegate willpower and discipline. And we do that through an accountability partner. This is, if you were to take one thing from this presentation, please let it be that. It's an absolute game changer. And fondly, I was taught that by one of my little cousins. I have a really good relationship with one of them. He must be 18 or 19 now. And we tend to exchange with each other books that we think the other person might like. And I recommended him a book by Gary Kellerman, The One Thing. Fantastic read. If any of you is keen, I strongly recommend. And he told me, oh, I found a really cool thing in that book called Accountability Partners. And he told me about this study run by Gail Matthews, a psychology professor in the Dominican University in California, I believe, where he put together a very large group of people from different walks of life, different nationalities, working in different industries, and he asked them to essentially work on a goal, whether it was a personal or a professional goal. And in the different groups he established, he told them to A, just think about the goal and then go about fulfilling it. Think about the goal and write it down. Think about the goal, write it down, and create an action plan. Think about the goal, write it down, create an action plan, and tell a friend about it. And finally, think about the goal, write it down, create an action plan, tell a friend, and provide your friend with progress reports on a weekly basis. And the results of this study were astonishing. Firstly, the difference between people who only thought about the goal and people who wrote it down was a 20% difference in completion rate, which is pretty solid by the amount of effort it will take. But the difference between those who just thought about the goal and those who went all the way to providing progress reports to their friends was close to 80%. So you can almost double your chances of completing things or going about them more efficiently if you find an accountability partner. Sometimes we will fail ourselves, like, oh, that's okay, I'll complete it tomorrow. But we will have a much harder time failing a friend. And if that is not enough, you can up the stakes and put something that will be a little bit painful on the game. And you don't have to do it, but it really does help. You could pledge to your friend that if you don't complete whichever task you said to complete by a specific time, you'll give them, well, beforehand, you give them $100 or $200. If you complete the task, you get it back. If you don't, they get to keep it. You'll see how much the level of motivation you get out of that. So action items for step number 3. use the Priority Crusher cheat sheet to plan your next day. I will give you access to that at the end so you can download it and just print it and use it or use it digitally. And find yourself an accountability partner. It's day and night. It's huge. Now, at this point, we have, pardon me, my throat is killing me. Spent about 25 hours in a plane over the weekend, and the air conditioning on the planes is just not good. At this point, we have unlocked energy to get things done. We have adjusted our surroundings to help us get things done. And we are using a system that is conducive to being efficient and effective at dealing with tasks. There is a next level, and it's learning to use our brain strategically to make completing tasks a lot easier by design. We have the most powerful computer and asset between our ears, every single one of us. But oftentimes, we don't really squeeze all the potential that it has. And I want to share with you 3 very easy ways in which you can get a lot more out of your think tank with very little effort. And the first one, you might have heard about this, is by aiming to work within our chronotype zone. And chronotype zones are just a fancy way to say whether you are a morning, a midday, or a night person. Is that moment in time within the day when we are naturally smarter, sharper, ideas come easier, and we operate naturally at a higher level. Every single one of us has that zone. It's important to try and identify it and try and schedule energy rather than tasks. The idea is you want to line up your most cognitively demanding tasks with your chronotype zone, and it's going to be a lot easier to complete them. Granted, sometimes due to the schedule we follow at work, might be a little bit challenging to line these ones up. But sometimes all it takes is a conversation with supervisors or the boss. If you are an entrepreneur, if you are the owner of your own business, then it's a little bit easier to pull this off. But do your best to try and line up this, and you will be surprised at how much extra free time you can unlock by scheduling energy rather than tasks. The next one is probably my favorite. Is I don't think a lot of people does the next strategy, at least consciously, and it's about creating classic conditioning associations to generate productivity on command. Who of you has heard about the Pavlov's dog experiment? Are we familiar with that? Okay, most of us have heard about it. For those who hasn't, what he did is he trained dogs to salivate by the ring of a bell. A bell wouldn't normally make a dog salivate because that's not a natural trigger. A natural trigger for a dog to salivate would be a steak or food, but not a bell. So we want to create that kind of association for us. Let me explain how. The natural reaction we want to have in our bodies is not salivate, that would be very helpful to get things done, is to enter a state of deep concentration or flow. A natural trigger for this will be working within your chronotype zone, or possibly working in a very relaxing space in your home or in your office where you're usually not disturbed and you feel at peace. That is number one thing to identify. We're going to call that the natural trigger, that situation that makes us concentrate naturally. Then we will find a neutral trigger, a stimuli that can be through sight, hearing, smell, or touch, that we're going to pair repeatedly until it makes us trigger the stimuli we want. For example, we choose to work in our chronotype zone whilst drinking pineapple juice. It's something that you wouldn't naturally come across with. It's very important that whichever stimuli you pick is something that you would never come across by accident. It's gotta be something that you only are exposed to when you want, otherwise it is not going to work. And so every time you work in your chronotype zone, you sip on pineapple juice. And then, when the day comes when you need to do very heavily demanding work, and you no longer have time in your chronotype zone, and you have to work in a moment where you are not naturally sharp, you get your pineapple juice, you start to sip on it, and suddenly you are deeply focused. It's crazy. It is really powerful, and it works. I created one of these for me by accident. I had no clue this was a thing. And when I was at uni doing my undergrad, I was living in Mexico in a city that gets really cold during winter. And for some reason, I get really cold in my legs. So whenever I was studying, I would wrap myself around a blanket just in the legs. Looked like a Scottish skirt of sorts. And I will do that all of the time. And now, if I put that thing around it, suddenly I am deep focused, like flicking a light switch, which is really cool. So give it a crack. Create productivity classic conditioning association and unleash your capacity to enter deep focus on command. Next, let's talk about the Zeigarnik effect, which is a fancy way to refer to our natural tendency to abhor open loops. I think we have all been in that situation when we watch a TV show and it finishes on this cliffhanger that makes us really want to watch the next one. It feels almost painful not to. That's the Zeigarnik effect in action. We don't like open loops. We need closure. And this is something you can deploy whenever you are working on a task. You know you will not be able to finish in one single go. So rather than doing what we usually do, which is reaching a milestone and wrapping up in something that has a sense of completion, we leave it open-ended. You leave that report halfway through a paragraph where you know exactly what you are going to say next, so that the next time you have to initiate the activity, you already have momentum. You don't have to sit and think, okay, how do I initiate this section of this paragraph? How do I deal with this blank page? You're already in momentum. You already know what to do, and that gives you a sense of kinetic energy and movement. It's easier to maintain movement than to initiate movement. So create that for yourself strategically and you'll see a massive difference. That wraps up step number 4. So find your chronotype. Super powerful. If you don't know it already, find it and try and start lining up a task that is cognitively demanding with that space in time. Pick a cue and create a classic conditioning association to create that flow state or that deep focus state. And the next time you can finish a task, leave it halfway done so that it is very easy to pick it up. And you'll see how much more free time you can unleash. Yes?
With the flow trigger, is music a good one, or should it be something that's less distracting? Should it be like a physical thing?
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm sure music sometimes helps, but sometimes it could be distracting.
Music can work as long as, one, it is not too distracting. Usually, what is recommended is white noise, brown noise, binaural beats, just instrumental that doesn't really elicit too many feelings. And it's gotta be something or a playlist that you would never hear otherwise. If it is part of your usual playlist that you listen to when driving, no, it's gotta be something that is specifically designated for that. And yeah, gotta be something that blends in the background, not something that you suddenly are feeling the rhythm and going through the lyrics, not that. Alright, So at this point, is that a handout?
Yeah, it's a suggestion. I use Brain FM. It's a subscription. I think it was $80 for the year, and it's specifically like neuro wired, whatever music. So you don't listen to it when you're not working. And I find it, it makes a huge difference. It's definitely become that flow trigger for me.
Brain FM, fantastic. Quite a few of my students use that and they swear by it, and it's so good. Yes. So at this point, we have completed 4 steps. We have energy, our environment is supporting us, we have a strategy to help us complete tasks efficiently, and we are squeezing a lot more out of our brain power. You could become at this stage a very efficient productivity machine. However, all this comes at a cost. And the one thing we don't want is to smash all of our tasks, unlock all this free time, and then be completely exhausted and burned out. That defies the purpose of this. And that's why the 5th and final step is about active recovery. How do we make sure we're getting all these things done in this compressed period of time, but still have energy left and by no means burn out? So there is a lot of literature in this. You could read books and find a zillion lifestyle coaches out there talking to no end on how can you be refreshed and energized. I'm just going to share with you 3 little things that are really easy to do and make a difference. But obviously, whatever works for you is the best. The name of the game is to recover, and to recover well and strategically. Number 1, I'm combining 2 in 1, breathing and meditation. When I was in high school, I was part of the state Taekwondo team, and we were training 4 to 5 hours every day, Monday to Saturday, and it was full on. I was definitely not prepared to train at this level, and I was not doing it right. I was not having proper nutrition. I didn't have a mental coach or anything like that, so I started to burn out bad, and I got really, really sick. I started to notice that my ability to perform at high school started to drop dramatically. Normally, I was reasonably good with numbers, and suddenly I couldn't do basic arithmetic on the top of my head. 7 times 8, I couldn't do it. I needed to check on a calculator. I was reading a paragraph, and I had to reread, not making any sense of what was going on. So I went to the doctor, they ran some tests, and they told me that my oxygen levels were dangerously low. So low that I was at the brink of experiencing brain damage. And they gave me a huge protocol to help me recover my oxygen levels to a healthy level. And amongst those things, he suggested taking breaks every 15, 30, 45 minutes to just breathe. Stop whatever you're doing and take 10, 15, 20 of those. And to my surprise, every single time I was stopping to have that breathing break, I would suddenly experience a jump in my ability. I would read the paragraph and it would stay in my mind. I would try to do basic maths and they were a little bit easier, and then it would fade. And then I would read again and my ability would improve once more. And other thing I found when doing these little breathing breaks is that because breathing is one of those activities, it's one of the few processes in the body that is both conscious and unconscious. When you don't think about it, you just breathe. But if you think about it, you can control how quickly and how deeply you breathe. So to have to stop and think, okay, I am breathing really deeply, eliminated completely my ability to think in anything else. I am terrible at multitasking, so to have to think about breathing was the only one thing I could do. And I noticed that in having this little mental reset, that essentially now that I have read about it, is how meditation works. You try and clear your mind to an extent. Try and channel your attentional space into a single point. And what it does is something really similar to when you are running a bunch of different apps in your phone or your computer. It reaches a point where it starts getting slow. And the moment you clear all of the apps, you close everything and give it a refresh, suddenly it starts to run a little bit faster and more smoothly. Same thing, stop to breathe for a while, channel all of your attentional space into a single activity, in this case, breathing, and the brain starts to work a little bit faster, and your allostatic load, which is a fancy way to refer to the tear and wear generated by daily stress, starts to drop, giving you a lot more stamina, for lack of a better word. Do it at least once or twice a day, and you will notice performance starts to increase. Now, the next thing I am going to suggest is a little bit controversial, but in terms of the amount of effort required to do it and the caliber of benefits that it delivers is disproportionate. I don't think there is anything quite like it, and is cold exposure. Ice baths are insanely good, but you don't necessarily have to jump into the ice. Even a cold shower can do the trick. One thing I was asked last time I was talking about it, and I did some research, is whether there is a particular level of cold that we have to cope, and whether there is a difference between cold tolerances. Some people can take a lot more cold than others, and the answer is really no. It doesn't have to be excruciatingly painful, nor do you need to get into a bucket to the rim of ice. As long as you are able to get in water cold enough to make you shiver within 3-ish minutes, that's good. If for you that's lukewarm and that makes you shiver, perfect. You get the benefits. And what happens is, there are a bunch of things happening. But in a nutshell, it makes you feel up, awake, and energized because of a bunch of reactions that happen in the body, including increased circulation. And it makes you feel as if you have had multiple cups of very heavily caffeinated coffee, but without the drawback of actually putting chemical substances in your body. Give it a crack. Even if you have never done it, 10 seconds at the end of your shower will wake you up. Like you'll thank you for it after you warm up, of course. So take it easy, but definitely give it a crack. Now, breathing, meditation, ice exposure. Also, ice exposure, if you get to do it once or twice per week, that's sweet. That already makes a big difference and helps you recuperate a lot of stamina and reduce your stress levels. I have, in occasions, told my partner, "Oh my goodness, I am feeling a little bit worn out and not great," and she has asked, "Have you had your ice baths this week?" She's like, "No." That's it. And invariably, when I do, at least once, then you're sweet. Now, let's talk about what we do during short breaks, because that's what makes it or break it during our day-to-day. And that's dopamine management. Most of us, whenever we have a little window of time between tasks during the workday, we'll get out the phone, scroll a little bit, watch a phone video, answer a message, but that's the beginning of the end. The thing is, dopamine, amongst other things, has two very important functions. And they are, one, it drives focus, and two, it drives motivation. And whichever activity generates the most dopamine wins our attention and wins our motivation towards activity. So, what I suggest is find a bunch of really boring activities to do during your breaks. I'm not kidding. Instead of getting your phone, when you start to feel the wear and tear because you are done writing that report, just turn around, look at the wall, and just chill there for 5 minutes doing nothing else. And by the time you go back to writing your report, even though it wouldn't be considered something particularly fun, it starts to generate more dopamine than staring at the wall good. And you get momentum. It sounds silly, but give it a crack. You can go for a walk without obviously engaging in the phone, trying not to interact with other people. Nothing wrong with that, but that's dopamine. And by the end of the day, you will have accomplished a lot more. And then, I mean, I have nothing against the phone. I use it all of the time, but I feel rather than having several short windows of engaging with it, I'd rather spend a solid block of time enjoying a TV show or doing something that gives you a more steady dose of dopamine. Recreation is very important. I heavily encourage recreation and getting that relaxed time at the end of the day. Now, at this stage, that closes the circle. Those are the 5 steps. Let's, get it done. Yes, very important for this part. Find a tiny window of time during the day to breathe. Just focus on your breathing. The meditation will come side by side. Just focus on getting oxygen going in your brain, in your veins. Try and do a 10-second cold shower at the beginning of your day. Something that I used to do when I started to do this is you get in the shower and you turn on the hot water, but obviously it's going to be cold at the beginning, so you just keep it cold until it warms up, and then you are good. Like that trains you to cope the shock. And then at the end of it, you just close the hot water and you just cope the cold one just for a little bit, and that's it. Makes a difference. And make up a list, make a strategy before you need to take the break. 10 boring activities to do so that you can have that level of variety as you go about it, and you'll see how much more you get complete during your day. Now, to recap really quickly, the 5 steps. 1, your body, prepare your body for productivity, get that energy so that you can actually get things done. 2, prepare your environment, make your space conducive to helping you getting things done rather to working against you. 3, the task itself. Try and pull through that holy trinity of productivity, priority, plan, deadline, and get an accountability partner to help you muster that willpower and discipline to have those deadlines if it is difficult to do on your own. Your brain, we have an insanely powerful machine out here. Find your chronotype, line up the most cognitively demanding activities with it. Create classic conditioning cues to help you drop into that flow state or hyper-focus state on command, and use the Zeigarnik effect to create open loops to help you have momentum. And finally, never forget about active recovery. Breathe, meditate, give a crack to cold exposure, and manage your dopamine effectively during the day so that by the end of it, you're feeling fresh to actually have the capability of enjoying that free time that you have unlocked. Now, I am fully aware at this point you must feel like you just try to drink from a fire hose. It's just a bunch of information in a very short period of time, and it'll be really difficult to assimilate. For that reason, I prepared a little toolkit for you that you can download with this QR code. In it, you will find an infographic that has a summary of everything we discussed in this presentation. It has the priority cheat sheet that I mentioned you, so that you can just fill in the gaps and use it to organize your day. A workbook that shows you how to implement step by step everything we talked about today. It goes through all of the topics I talk about in my book and has a micro summary of each of the chapters, so you don't need the book to use it. And I design it so that it leverages the principles in Atomic Habits to make building habits as easy as possible. It has all of the bullet points that I share with you at the end of each step. And I will also add you to a newsletter I created that is 1 minute tip each week. It takes 1 minute to read, and it has the potential to save you hours. Obviously, if you're not interested in that, you can just respond to the email and say like, hey Joaquin, can you please take me out of the list, and I will do, or you can just click on the unsubscribe button, and that's as easy as that.